All right. Good morning. Welcome to our Ascended World Weekly Edition.
Yeah. Our WTF for the week.
That's right. So, it's funny because we say those things to ourselves, like what you had said, like you start thinking that saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then you're saying you want to just throw everything out, the bathtub included, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
my hands are throwing it out.
you know what, though? Maybe we sometimes create our own judgment based on sayings, right? That have become collective sayings that we think are bad, right?
Right.
I mean, and that's a judgment. So I don't know, because the more people I know, I know a lot of people right now that are getting to the point of just throwing the whole effing tub out, and and it's not a bad thing. In fact, it's often what I think right now is the universe or our higher selves, or however you want to look at it, higher consciousness is getting to push us past where we've been stuck.
Yeah.
Right. So let me tell you what happened to me yesterday, because somehow it'll tie in, because it's pretty phenomenally huge. And I'm still like, in meditation this morning, I'm like, so what do I do with this? And, another shelving thing, except it's not been shelved. As Sarah has said, my shelves are going to fall over soon. I have to get more of them. Except things are starting to consolidate, I will say.
I mean, who am I to talk? I have a house full of shelves.
So one of the themes, so what did we even talk about last week? Do you even remember?
I was looking at it. I was looking at what I had written down, and it was, I wrote down seeking passion and anxious.
That's right. That's right.
Those were the highlights.
So last week we were talking about what that, finding your passion, remembering what your passion is, allowing yourself to do that. That's what it was. So what's interesting is what has been a theme, and this has nothing to do with that. I was just trying to remember what was last week, because in case it continues, we'll just have to see. So another theme that has been underlying, and I know we've talked about it off and on over the years with this, has been this push on looking at the darkness, looking at and accepting the darkness. And it's been in my face, right? Watching, like, and one of the things that we had gotten, I don't even know when, a while back, had to do with some of the biggest parts of remembrance are hidden in plain sight, and the deepest parts of our darkness, because we don't want to look there, right? So of course we're going to hide the golden nuggets there, because it's not until we can accept those darkest parts of ourselves, of what we've created and everything else, that we can remember those bigger pieces of the gold, what we call, I guess we'll call the golden nuggets. So, we've done these in waves, and it's almost like a big spiral, right? Starts, and then it just keeps on, and we keep on thinking we're done, with it. Like I always laugh, checked off on Sunday afternoon. Although Sunday afternoon was what hit me yesterday. This is a big one. So we looked at a lot of darkness in Peru, right?
Right.
A lot of collective resentment and anger from another iteration of remembering and crashing. And also that we're at this point, oh my God, see, the yawns are already coming in. At this point, we're pushing ourselves to make a lot of stuff crumble. And at the end of that, part of the choice to collectively was to choose differently, right? And the differently is this, well, how do we do this? How do we come back to remembrance? And what we keep on asking is, well, how do we do that? How do we do this differently, right? So then ever since then, what's been in my face? darkness, 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 right? And I didn't even connect this until yesterday. Like, oh, well, of course, it's the answer to my question is like, how do we do this? And it's like, well, have you really accepted the darkness? Have you really accepted it?
Well, and
And
do we even know how?
yeah, right. And so I keep on looking at stuff and I'm like, wow, like things I'm watching that are really dark and yet have these really great nuggets of remembrance in them if you look past the darkness, right? Which was, again, it's totally that experience of looking past the darkness to see, really the remembrance within it. Because part of the challenge we continue with is this: we only want to embrace the light, right? We talk about, I'm a light worker, I'm a, blah, blah, blah. And, and the darkness is bad. And I need to
get rid of the
get
darkness.
rid of it.
Cast it out.
Right. So,
well, and I don't want to sidetrack what you're saying, but something that I've been noticing is how much, even though everyone dies, it's considered the darkness.
right.
So if you look past the death.
And that's funny you say that, because that was something that came to me this morning, which was really interesting. And it was so distinct. And I've said it before, but I've never actually felt it in the way I did, which is, die or not, physical or not, I always exist.
Right.
Right. And it was so weird because it was just such a weird thing to come up, so I've had all these things with darkness come up, and that I've been pushed to just look beyond. So I shouldn't have been surprised yesterday when I went into meditation after, because I texted you and I was like, I've been avoiding meditation for a couple of days and I'm not quite sure why. And it was like, well, and I wasn't feeling bad. I was actually feeling really good and all that kind of stuff. And then so I went in. I ended up being in there in my meditation for 2.5 hours. It is one of the deepest meditations I've had in I don't know how long. So I'm trying to write in my journal. And you know how like sometimes when you're getting pulled out there, it's like you can't do anything. Like all of a sudden it's like literally a hand just like reaching in and pulling you out. So I'm writing it and I wrote down, it was such an interesting thing. Hold on, I have my journal in here today. The devil. But it wasn't just the devil. So here's the funny thing. What does the devil have to show me? That was an interesting question that just came out of nowhere. And as I was being pulled out, and it wasn't just the devil, it was Lucifer, but then it was like all of the levels of that consciousness too, right? Because there's the exalted, there's the low. So the funniest thing was I sort of checked in about that and I could feel that pull. And I was like, okay, well, let's go, right? Let's bring it on, So I'm still trying to figure out what happened, except I felt one of the most profound shifts that I have ever felt, which was I was being walked through into this level of darkness. And it was almost like, I want to say the bottom was pulled out. Like there was, because it's like we have a top and a bottom of like what we consider in perception or, like bands of vibration and how we can perceive them in our physical being, right? So it was like, I want to say, and I wrote this down in my journals, I want to say it was like the bottom was pulled out, but that's really not what it was. It was something that was so completely foreign to my consciousness that I can remember that I couldn't even explain, except that it was some of the most peaceful, it was like one of the most peaceful and releasing experiences I've ever had, because it was almost like these really deep partitions were pulled out. And once that happened, like it was like the darkness flooded in, but so did the light. And it was like all complete. And it was so relaxing. It was like, oh my God, I could just float in this forever. And I'm like, I came back and it's like 2.5 hours later. And I was like, apparently I needed that. It was like I had some like amazingly deep tissue massage or something, but I literally felt physically different. Like everything I perceive is different. And I can't even tell you what happened. right? Except this huge amount of gratitude for, oh, apparently I could finally look at it or allow that possibility, right? Because if we say, pull the bottom out from under you, what do we fear? We fear how deep it's going to go, right?
Right. And that we'll never be able to pull back out of it.
Yeah. And so it was like, but it was like almost full circle, because to go to that full level of light is for us to go down to that full level of darkness, right? So what happened in that was this like huge, and it was such a shift. And I just, it's just so profound. I just have been like,
well, I mean, if you think about it, because if you live in nothing but grays, which is, you know, a lot of light, not a lot of darkness,
yeah,
you get accustomed to that dullness.
yeah,
And you allow what you're saying in. I'm sure that the vibrancy and the richness and it lets I mean, if you keep out the lows, you keep out the highs.
right. And so that's what I was looking at this morning in meditation, right? Which was, okay, so I know and last night my dream world was so vivid. It was even more vivid than I can remember.
Mine was really busy.
Yeah. And it was like one thing after the other, where I was being asked to go in and shift something. And there were these little minor shifts, like energetically. It was almost like I was like the production manager, behind it. And it was like just little shit. And it was so easy and effortless. It felt so good. And I was like, oh, I woke up and I felt really accomplished. I don't after a busy night like that,
Yeah.
But when it's meditation, I'm like, so what is this? Because this is like tremendous. And I could never even explain it to what it's about. But in meditation, it's like I could go out there and I could see how in the creation of duality, right, in the triality, and the triality part is, it's almost like the triality comes before the wholeness, because it's that accepting of oneness as well as duality together, right?
Right.
So it was, and I think that's where I was, because I was looking at duality and its wholeness in itself. And it was like, so every time we create this exalted, extreme light level of ourselves, we also create this really dark, deep, like, because we created duality. So what many don't realize is we think light encompasses the dark. It's no, light and dark were created in duality, opposite of each other, right?
Right.
Because to perceive the light, we have to have dark, and to perceive the dark, we have to have light. Because if we didn't need that, if they weren't opposite each other, we wouldn't need that, right?
Right.
So, oh God, I saw everything just came flooding in about, how we've done spell casting or, magic work, or like anything that has to do with like divine consciousness. And we've all done it based in duality, and in the duality, we base it against a friction of, like all I see is like bouncing off of like what do you call it? Like a reference point, to propulsion against something, right? So I'm like, wow, like, and everything I could think of, I could see the opposing forces, like in duality.
Well, and it's like every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's based in that.
So for us to come really back to the wholeness is really like, we say it and say it and say it, but it's really embracing that there is no light without the dark. And
right. Which there's a difference in saying, yeah, I get that, and embracing it.
That's right.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah. Yesterday. So I'm like, okay, well, this is going to take a little bit, because this is like a huge shift in knowing. Like, it's just like, well,
and it's so big that it skips all the other things and goes straight to the knowing.
Yeah, totally.
Which I'm all about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Except the thing is, and I'm going, so what do what do I do? It's like, what do I do with this? Except it becomes so, everything just suddenly after yesterday, everything felt so fluid, like so fluid in a way I'd never felt it before. It was just okay. Everything was okay. And like, it was like easy and effortless. And yeah, and it was funny because, and I don't even know where the whole thing about, because and while I was out there this morning, I saw the whole death and birth and, and chaos and order and collapsing and building and like all of the simultaneousness of the whole thing, right? And then there was this thought that as I was coming back, which was that whether I'm dead or not means nothing because I'm always in existence.
Right.
And I've always said that and known it, but this was the first time I said it and really knew it. Like, it was just like, there's no difference.
See you later. Bye, Char.
So yeah, and it was like, wow, there's no difference. And when we can say there's no difference is when we not say, but just not just say, but know,
Right.
and remember that there's no difference. We can actually say, well, then there's no fear, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
no need for propulsion anymore.
Right.
There is the true being. And then I was like, okay.
And that gives you the power of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I feel like I was being shown or brought to do those things in sleep last night, because it was literally just a little, like little like tweaks to all these different like things that I was shown. I was like, oh, that was really easy. Because you can then see the whole picture, right? You're not just working in, the mechanical part of something, or you're not just working in the electronic part of something. You're
right.
There are all these elements and you can see them all come together. So that somehow ties in. And I feel like for us in realization of what our, and I say purpose, and purpose is divided. Purpose is in duality too, because I exist whether I'm here or not. I am complete whether I'm here or not. I am complete whether I walk off this planet right this second.
Right.
Or if I stay another 40 years or 60 years or 100 years, So then the next part is the ego sits there and is like, so then knowing this and remembering this, it's like, so then what do I want to do anything for?
I know. Right.
So, but I feel like it's like saying, okay, well, but then to go back to, people are looking, we're looking for what to do next and what to do differently and all that kind of stuff. Well, we've not ever really made decisions based on this wholeness, right? It's always been on light or dark, what we don't want or what we do want, right?
Right. It's never been unconditional.
Right. And this is truly unconditional. This is, we talk about unconditional love and then we exile the darkness.
Right.
Right? I know. And you're thinking, that just doesn't even make sense. Like, and it was so funny because like in meditation, I was looking at that and I'm like, that just doesn't even make sense. How can you not love the dark if you are to come into unconditional love? Then how do you, and it's funny because we talk about, it was interesting. I was watching something or somebody was posting something about, this particular person's coming to speak, blah, 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 and their love realized. And I hear, that's a new one that I see. Oh, love realized, right? And, we're so big on these categories, are you realized? Are you self-realized? Are you love realized? Are you whatever? But do we ever say, are you darkness realized?
Yeah.
Right?
Have you embraced the darkness within yet?
Yeah. Because all I could see, and then, it was funny. What came to mind was this conversation that happened in the Last Jedi movie. The Last Jedi movie. Yeah, that's the one. The last one that had Mark Hamill in it and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that one?
No.
So the male and female youngins, the one who's representing the Jedi side and was representing the Sith side, they're having this conversation because they have this uncanny connection to each other, right? And one of the things that actually was funny, because my husband actually saw that in the conversation, and afterward he goes, that actually made a lot of sense to me, because the guy was saying to her, he's like, you know what? He's like, as long as there are Jedis, there are going to be Siths, because you have to balance the Force, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
And he's like, we should let them all implode and kill each other and start from scratch, because then if we start from this place where there is no good and bad, it just is, like it's all incorporated, then we won't have that anymore, right? And we have a lot of stories in our mythologies and stuff that talk about that. But even the Twilight series, they talk about that, with the vampires, and for every vampire that's there's a werewolf that gets awakened, because it's a balance. And I could see that the more we claim the light, the more we actually create the darkness.
I know. Yeah, for every light worker, there's a dark worker.
Right. And so then what we're doing is we're still perpetuating.
Right. Under the guise of being more evolved, being enlightened.
Right. Except maybe that's where we've crashed in the past.
Well, it certainly feels like we're becoming more and more polarized these days.
Yep.
Which, in my mind, can't help but lead to a crash, because it's the coming together, not the pulling apart.
Right.
And we keep getting pulled apart.
Yeah. So this is still just percolating out there, and it's just all this stuff just is. It's just it's like this domino effect since yesterday. And I'm like, well, I can't even consciously keep up with it. So that's fine. But when we look at that perspective, though, then really our purpose is, what would our purpose be? Our purpose would be to be able to fully accept our wholeness, all of it.
Right, which takes on a whole different meaning in the context of what we're talking about.
Yes. Yep. And ever since, I've come home from the travels, all I keep on getting banged over the head with is stay in the bigger picture, don't get lost in the details, because the details are completely unimportant.
Right.
Stay in the bigger picture. And so every time I start getting pulled in, it's like, nope, stay here. And then I just keep on getting banged over the head with this, which is good. Because once you can see this, all the little stuff is just like I said, it was just okay, whatever, everything's fine. It's easy. It flows. Because then you can really accept that everything's easy. You can accept everything to flow, even when it presents itself to not flow.
Right.
Because it's all part of the whole. It's not a flow or not flow. It's just where in the flow it is. It's just such a different it's such a different perspective and feeling and knowing. And so really, if we step back, we talk about coming to unconditional love, and it truly is that unconditional love coming into a place of seeing the whole picture instead of denying yourself that part of you that was created in duality and triality. So then I go back to the walk-in part of me, the walk-along part of me that was that came from a different part of this. And it was so all of that, we're all of it. And that would be the triality nature, the Trinity nature, right?
Right.
The coming in with wholeness and duality. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So, and it's really funny. And how do we get there? I don't know. We commit ourselves to getting there.
It seems like just keeping that, just like your vibration, because your vibration is all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And in reality, the place of coming into peace, because like I said, pulling that out yesterday, or having that pulled out, or allowing myself to pull that out yesterday, right, created such a deep peace of, it's like, it was almost like, it was like I've been holding on to like some 5 billion pound thing that I didn't even realize it was that gravity thing, right?
Gravity, yeah.
And when it was pulled out, I was like, oh my God, thank God, it feels so much better.
Well, and if you think about it, it's we each hold our belief in gravity, which is what holds it in place.
Yeah.
So we each hold our piece of this, of separation that holds it in place.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we get to that place where, when we can accept, and all I keep on saying, all I've been saying a lot since all the traveling too has been allowing all possibility. If I allowed all possibility, what would this look like? Right. And I say that every day, and I put that in my journal, and I'm like, whatever it is I'm considering, if I allowed all possibility, what would this look like? Because it doesn't put any predisposition as to what it would have to look like, and people say, oh, well, darkness is dangerous. And it's like, no, but that's fear, and that creates more of it. Right. And it's like, well, when you're looking at it from wholeness, there is nothing outside of me. So anything I choose to do is going to be conscious awareness and knowledge of what I'm doing to myself. And that is really more unconditional love, because that's really truly unconditional love, because it's that. So I'm always going to look at the whole picture.
Right.
I'm always going to, and that's committing to, I'm always going to look at the whole picture and act from that, in that place of wholeness, because to create this picture is to have all these notes in the symphony, right? And there's no judgment on any of that. There's no bad note.
Right. Right.
And I believe that as we look at things in that wholeness, the notes change to something completely new and different, and scales and notes, if you want to look at it from a musical standpoint, frequencies that we have not accessed in the body, or in, even in any kind of, identity, become accessible again, because we allow for different scales. Like, it's like that frequency of one of the things that came to me last week, I meant to text you this and I forgot, because, there's been a lot of people I know who talk about this question about the eyes. They seem to have issues with the eyes getting worse, or some weird things happening with the eyes. And I've just had that question because I've known a lot of people who've had that, right? And I don't believe it's age, because age is, an expectation or a creation, of ours, aging. And so I've been waiting for an answer on that. So in the process of all of this coming in over the week, it was something that came into me about, I was in a conversation I was having with somebody on how, of course, our eyes are going to feel like they're failing us, because as we're shifting into a completely different set of vibrations, our eyes have been created to see in a certain vibration. And if our physical body is changed, if we are changing our whole consciousness to exist in a different, wider scope of vibration, and the world is changing around us to accommodate that, our eyes are going to be like, WTF, because I was created to see in this set of frequency, right? So it can feel more and more almost degenerative because of the consciousness of seeing. And I think it's going to catch up, but we're not sure how to have our bodies catch up yet. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Right.
That was the first thing that actually came to me that made a lot of sense. And I was like, oh, so I'd imagine hearing would feel the same way, tasting, all of the physical senses that we've created with our bodies, which again, then what does it do? It aligns to what people still stick with in the psychic world of the clair senses, right? Which those are going to become very confining,
Right.
or not quite adequate anymore.
Yeah, because I was saying that's why, the knowing is so much more powerful.
Right.
Because it's like you skip all those.
Well, because the knowing doesn't depend on any senses, based on the guidance that we have from guidance, the down on the ground management we have of trying to compare everything from our aunt's point of view in the body, these physical senses in our bodies. It just doesn't make sense because the non-physical senses are way beyond our physical senses. If we only allow it to be, clairvoyant, clairsentient, audio, or whatever you call it, or any of them, if we base them on the physical senses, they're only going to be so efficient. And as we exist in these different frequencies all together, they're not going to work, and they're not going to work in the same way, because we are, it's like cats and dogs, right? They have hearing abilities, and animals have much different hearing abilities than we do, right? Our ears only hear or perceive or have traditionally only perceived a certain range of frequencies. And dogs and cats and other animals have different, much different, wider scopes, it tends to
Right.
be. So they hear things we physically can't hear. It's like that, right? It's just in our knowing. And so if we go right to knowing, and knowing doesn't depend on what it feels like or tastes like or, looks like or whatever, it's just a knowing. Yeah. That's the way to bypass any difficulties and tripping ourselves up. But yet it's for us to get past the point of saying, I have to have this kind of experience to know, right?
Right.
Speaking of frequencies, I've had that wah thing in my ear still off and on for like a week now.
Yeah. 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 I'm starting to where I'm not only hearing it, but I'm feeling it too.
Yeah. I know. And you're like, I don't know about you, but I keep on saying, okay, so can we adjust this so I can consciously understand it? Can I
Well, I'm like, they're starting to break ground on a house down the street from us. And I'm like, wow, they're really moving some earth, because it's that deep, low earth moving sound. And and we're walking the dog, and we get down there, no one's there.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, somewhere they're moving some dirt.
Somewhere in Singapore.
Right. Or maybe I'm hearing all the fire ants because of the rain boiling out of the ground.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we had rain? We had rain over the weekend. Not all weekend, but over. And there was rain coming in last night, and there was this big fire ant mound out in front. I was like, must be gonna rain, because they haven't been up that high for a while. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I guess the question is, what do we do perceiving this world differently if the world is still based on, the question is the world still based on those, or is it that we haven't caught up to?
Personally, I feel like we're only perceiving the parts of the world that we can perceive, and that it's all there already.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Well, it's like the pyramids and all that kind of stuff that we're seeing.
And the more that we come to know this, the more things will become apparent.
Oh, maybe. Oh, yeah, it just came to me. That's interesting. The oh, ding! My phone just dinged.
Well, there you go.
Another ding. Oh, a couple dings. I'm gonna turn off my sound now. Somehow that thrumming is connected to the crystal pyramids coming
Online.
Yeah.
Or our perception of them is coming
Or our frequency is coming online to them.
Oh, that feels even better.
Mm-hmm. And it's the, what's the word they call it? Calibration. It's our physical calibration to that vibration again. Yeah. Yeah. I've had that for the past week. It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. It's like one night it was deafening. It was really loud. I was like, what the heck? And I could feel it like in my cells, and it was like 2:00 in the morning. I was like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, allow. Flow. Okay, well, now we know what to do with that.
Yeah, allow is the word that keeps it feels so much more powerful now than it ever has.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because this has always been here, and the only thing that's held it back is our disallowance of it.
Right. So where do we go with this today? Where would we focus with this today?
Maybe the focus is on the allowance.
Yeah.
And to allow the fear to dissipate.
Right. Well, and maybe that's why that thought came to me while I was coming back this morning, because I guess essentially when we let go of all that resistance, or let go of all the energy of resistance, then we do dissipate we do dissipate. Because like I said, it was so weird that I was like, where did that thought come from? It's like, whether I'm physically here or not, I always exist.
Right.
I was like, well, that was random, but it wasn't.
Well, and when you look at traditionally in our belief system, the way to motivate somebody to do something is through fear.
Yeah.
So fear is what has kept us where we are.
Well, fear and friction, right? So whether it's fear or anger, right? How many times have you heard anger motivates people? Sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, look at in general what motivates people. When I was seeing all that bipolarity and how like creating one creates the other and continues that. Yeah, then you could see, well, then it's like, well, but because then it takes away the need to create friction to do something, because it's already done and complete without needing that friction. Right. And that's
I'm feeling that sense of relief, because it's like every breath that we've taken has been towards that.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, imagine what we could do if we no longer had that distraction.
Or how to put our energy toward that.
Right.
Like I said, biggest thing yesterday was the realization when something like that is pulled out and shifted, like my whole thing is always like, wow, I feel so much more relaxed. Like I feel like, oh my God, I feel like I just put down this 3,000 pound weight, whatever.
That I didn't even know I was holding.
that I didn't realize I was holding. Yeah. I'm like, oh, but that was probably one of the deepest. So yeah. Yeah. The allowance of that, I guess. The allowance of the realness of wholeness, the realization of wholeness, I mean, this goes beyond accepting the darkness because I don't even think we have words for that.
Yeah. Yeah. This is way beyond just embracing the shadow side.
It's just a little blip in the radar.
Right. Right. That truly was just Sunday afternoon.
It truly was, yes. So oh, there's the yawn. There's the yawn. Doing some major shifting here. Well, whatever that is, right? So that we can in realization of our wholeness, allowing, gosh, I was just like, I'm having a hard time with words. We don't even need words for this, but it's almost
Yeah.
like
I
just
think the only word that keeps feeling appropriate to me is allowance or allow or,
allowing the realization of wholeness. Maybe that's it.
that feels pretty good.
Yeah. And everything around it. Yeah. It's like the full realization.
Right.
Because then you start, it was so incredible because I do remember all these things flashing through yesterday. And I was just like, it became so unimportant. So it was just a piece, like a pixel in the whole picture, everything that I was shown
Right.
made up the whole picture. And then all of a sudden I was able to see the whole picture because I didn't have any biases, right, or filters against certain parts of it,
Right.
which prevented me from being able to see the whole thing. Yeah. So allowing the full realization of wholeness. Let's just start there and whatever's around that. All right, you ready?
That sounds good.
All right. So how was that for you?
It was rough at first. Felt like I had to break myself out of like a shell.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing myself, how when you're knocked back and you fall flat on your back and it's that shock.
Uh-huh.
It's like I kept feeling that like over and over and over. And I kept going, why do I need this?
Right.
And it was like breaking out of the mold, out of the.
Oh, you were throwing yourself on the floor to break the mold.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So and then I saw myself like one hand on a door and another hand on another door. And it was like trying to adjust so just the right amount came through. Like not too much light, not too much dark, and, constantly working the balance. And it was like, okay, just let the doors open. And then I was like, just get rid of the doors.
Right? No doors. Yeah. Exactly.
No doors.
Yeah, I felt rumbling in the beginning. And it goes back to sort of what we had seen, that whole experience at Machu Picchu, the ground rumbling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like I was watching it. Like I could literally see that rumbling in frequency. And I just sort of flowed through it. And it was just really cool. Because once I got through it, then it was just so deeply peaceful. It was nice. It was that creative void.
Yeah.
That I had experienced that time in the float tank that I did, right? Where
Right.
Once I got out of all physicality, it was like, oh. And it's funny because when you say the creative void to people, you say a void to people, many consider that dark, right?
Right.
Dark. I'm like, no, it's just everything and nothing simultaneously. So it's everything and nothing simultaneously. It's what you want to see in it.
Right.
Yeah, I can't even remember now because I went pretty deep then at the end, and it was just like something. Oh, and then the thrumming came, and I was like, oh, okay. So as we're doing this, let our bodies catch up to exist vibrationally,
Right.
and anchor. And so, yeah, I got that the crystal pyramids that we're connecting with and coming, that we can perceive to be coming back online, that they're definitely an anchor for us to calibrate with, which of course goes with what we saw in Shasta, putting our hands on it, right? And sort of activating our own, I guess our soul symbol or whatever that was.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, allowing ourselves, our physical selves to catch up to that. And so I was like, okay, let me allow that. So I don't have to hear this thrumming off and on.
Right.
Or feel it or whatever you want to call it, perceive it. And it got louder, it got softer. It's mostly gone now. So I'm just gonna have to focus. That's what I'm gonna focus on. That was really cool. That was like 20 things all at once. So that was fabulous.
Yeah.
So everybody play in that this week, in that perception.
Yeah. Lots to play with.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there'll be more next week.
Always.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us on, I guess we're calling this the Underworld now. So we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Well, that's totally fitting, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
We'll see y'all next time.